In the previous training video film modules, we had shown you the prescribed light maintenance schedules for the mechanical sub-assemblies of the diesel-electric locomotives. In this training module, we will show you the incoming examination and the prescribed light maintenance schedules for the electrical sub-assemblies of the diesel-electric locomotive. The incoming examination of the diesel locomotive is done before every schedule. The A schedule is done after every 10 days, B schedule after every month, and the C schedule is done after every 3 months. The A schedule will include all the checks carried out in the incoming examination, plus the prescribed A schedule items. Similarly, B schedule will include the A schedule plus the prescribed B schedule items, and the C schedule will include B schedule plus the prescribed C schedule items. The various electrical sub-assemblies discussed in this training video module are the control panel and its components, governor, traction alternator and the power rectifier, auxiliary machines, traction motors, small motors. We will talk about these electrical sub-assemblies one by one. In the A schedule of incoming examination, open the covers of the front panel, back panel, control stand, the covers of traction alternator and the auxiliary machines for inspection. Inspect the auxiliary machines, traction alternator, small motors and the eddy current clutch assembly for any abnormal sound, abnormal odor or abnormal heating in the loco run condition. Also, check for any oil leakage from the auxiliary machine, traction alternator gear case, governor or the fuel booster pump. Check the headlights, flasher lights and the marker lights for their proper working. Inspect the working of all the safety items. For checking the working of the low water switch or the LWS, drain out the water from the low water switch by opening the low water switch water drain cock. The engine should shut down with hot engine alarm and indication. Close the same cock. Now the hot engine alarm and indication should stop. Now check the operation of the ground relay. By operating the ground relay manually, the engine should come to idle position and the energized GF should get de-energized. On resetting the ground relay, if the GF contactor gets energized, the operation of the ground relay is normal. In case of dead man relay, in loco race condition, on operating the SA9, the dead man relay should get de-energized and the engine should come to idle. Now put the throttle to idle and SA9 to normal position, the dead man relay should get energized. For the working of LLOP, keep engine in run position and pull out the LLOP manually. The engine should shut down with low loop oil alarm and indication. Now, on resetting the LLOP manually, the alarm should stop and the indication should glow off. Check the operation of all the emergency switches or the bypass switches like the radiator fan emergency switch, the GF switch, and motor cutout switch. Check the operation of both the master controllers. The engine RPM should increase and decrease as per the throttle position. Check the operation of series and the parallel contactors for their proper picking up and dropping. There should be no air leakage from air pipes and the EP contactors. Check the operation of the GF contactor. Put the ECS on run. GF switches on both control stands in on position and give direction to the reverser contactor. Put the reverser handle in neutral position and throttle on the first notch. If the GF contactor picks up, the operation of the GF contactor is right. Check the operation of the reverser contactor. It should move backwards and forward properly. Check the operation of engine control switch. The engine should come to idle RPM when the ECS is brought to idle position.
Check the operation of MUSD.
The engine should come to shutdown position when the multi-unit shutdown device is brought to stop position. Check the charging rate of the batteries in the battery ammeter. It should be less than 20 amperes. Check the operation of load meters on both control stands. The reading of the load meters on both control stands on the first notch should be the same. Check the power reduction in load meter by operating the wheel slip relay 1, 2 and 3, turn by turn.
The load meter needle should approach 0
on operation of the wheel slip relay.
Check the indication lights on the indication panel. The indication lights should glow off and glow on for their respective items.
Check for leakage of cooling air from the traction motor air duct boots. All the leads should be secured within cleats, and the covers of the traction motor should be intact. In the B schedule of incoming examination,
the engine RPM should be 400 on idle and 1000 on the 8th notch. Check the exciter voltage on the first notch and the 8th notch. The reference voltage should be 24.4 volts on all notches. The reference current should be 31.5 amperes on the 8th notch.
the tacho generator voltage should be 105 to 115 volts on 8th notch and 45 to 50 volts on idle. The millivolt drop in the series combination should not be more than 300 millivolts, and the millivolt drop in parallel combination should not be more than 100 millivolts. The battery charging voltage should be 72 volts approximately, plus minus 0.5 volts on all notches.
The battery voltage should be 68 volts. The insulation resistance of the power circuit should not be less than 1 mega ohm using a 1000 volt mega. The insulation resistance of the control circuit should not be less than 1 mega ohm using a 250 volt mega.
The traction motor air pressure should not be less than 65 millimeters of water on the 8th notch. In the C schedule of incoming examination,
measure the radiator fan RPM with a stroboscope.
The radiator fan RPM should be 1.13 times the engine RPM. Check the transition settings as required. Check the operation of engine temperature switch 3. The hot engine alarm and indication should come at 90 degrees centigrade. Check the overspeed trip assembly RPM.
By using a multimeter,
The OSTA RPM should be 1140 to 1150 or as specified.
the various components of the control panel are the excitation panel, voltage regulator panel, engine control panel, etc., contactors, relays, switches and circuit breakers, lights and the meters, back panel and 24-point junction box, and the master controller.
Before beginning scheduling of the control panel, clean with lintless cloth and air blow all the loose dust and dirt from all the components of the control panel. In the A schedule, visually check the terminal connections of all the components and terminal boards of the panel. All the terminal connections should be completely tightened. If any signs of overheating is observed on terminals or thimbles or the terminal board, replace the thimble or the terminal board and trace out the cause of overheating. Check the fitment of the control panel. Check and ensure that the cards of the excitation panel, VRP and TRP are properly fitted in their sockets. Check the control cable bunches of the front and back panel. The cables should be properly secured and there should be no fouling with any component. In the B schedule, all the items that were visually checked in the A schedule should be physically checked in the B schedule. In addition, take out all the cards of the excitation panel, voltage regulator panel and the TRP from their sockets and check the female pins and their corresponding male pins. If any signs of overheating is observed on the male pin, clean the flash marks with lintless cloth or emery paper. If any signs of overheating is observed on the female pin, change the card. After checking and cleaning the components, check all the electrical parameters in the engine run position. Check visually all the components of the card for overheating, dry solder, etc. In the A schedule of the electromagnetic contactors, check the contact tips of the contactors. If there is any carbonization or flash marks on the contact tips, clean the tips with clean cloth or emery paper. In case of heavy flash mark, on the tips, or if the tip has worn out, replace with a new tip and ensure proper matching of the tips. Ensure free movement of the movable contact. Check the alignment and the gap between the movable contact and its fixed contact. If the alignment is not proper, rectify the fault. Check the shunt of the contactors. All the shunts should be fully tightened at both the ends. If any shunt is showing signs of aging, sulfation, or the copper strands are broken, replace with a new shunt. Check the knuckling spring and the armature spring of the contactors. If the spring is broken or compressed, or the spring tension is not proper, replace with a new spring. Ensure that all the screws, wire terminals and foundation bolts of all the contactors are completely tightened. If any wire terminal is broken, rejoin the wire or change the terminal. In the B schedule of electromagnetic contactors, clean all the interlocks with dry and clean cloth. Check the condition of interlocks. If any interlock is broken, misaligned, or has insufficient over travel, change the interlock. Check the current drawing of the fuel pump contactor coil and the GF coil by connecting an ammeter in series.
The ammeter should read 365 plus minus 5 milliamperes.
Now we will talk about the maintenance procedure of the electro-pneumatic contactors. Check the contact tips, the shunts, terminal connections, interlocks, foundation bolts, knuckling spring as shown to you in the case of electromagnetic contactors. In addition, check the operation of the EP valves of electro-pneumatic contactors in the engine start condition by pressing the armature manually. Ensure that there is no air leakage from the air pipes connected to the electro-pneumatic valves. If there is any air leakage, tighten the nut or change the pipe. In the A schedule of the reverser contactor, check the condition of the contacts of the reverser contactor. If there are signs of overheating or flash marks on the contacts, clean the contacts with lintless cloth or emery paper. Check the alignment and over travel of the interlocks. If over travel has got lost, check the reverser springs and the spring guides of the shunts. Manually check the operation of the reverser contactor. The operation should be smooth. Check the tapes over reverser bus bars. Never leave any loose or free end of tapes. Always ensure the separation of the bus bars with a wooden or bakelite piece.
Ensure the tightness of all the nuts and bolts of the reverser.
Check the terminal connections of all the relays. If any terminal connection is loose or broken, tighten or rejoin connections as required. Check the general condition of the interlocks. If there are flash marks, wear and tear on the fingertips of any interlock, clean the interlock with lintless cloth or emery paper. If required, change the relay. Operate the relay manually and ensure proper alignment of the relay contacts. If the contacts are not aligned properly, change the relay. Check the overtravel of the interlocks. If the contact gap of the interlocks is not proper, replace with a new relay. Check and ensure proper fitment of its armature spring. Ensure that all the foundation bolts of the relays are properly tightened. In the A schedule of switches, check and ensure proper fitment of all the switches on the foundation screws. Check the manual operation of all switches. The operation of all the switches should be smooth and they should work properly as per their indicated position. For example, the headlight switch should glow bright on its bright position and dim on its dim position. Remember, after checking the operation of
Motor cutout switch,
secure the sealing of the
motor cutout switch,
the knob of the switches should not have any excessive play. If there is excessive play between the knob and the shaft, change the switch. Take out the switches from their sockets and check their terminal connections. If any terminal connection is found loose, tighten the loose connection, and if any terminal connection has broken, rejoin the wire to the connection. In the B schedule of the low water switch, check the operation of the low water switch by draining water from the low water switch. The loco should shut down with hot engine alarm and indication. Check the terminal connections in the LWS microswitch. If any connection is loose, tighten it properly. And if any terminal connection is broken, rejoin the connection. The elbow of the LWS should be properly tightened. In the B schedule of the engine temperature switches or the ETS, check the temperature setting of the ETS1 and the ETS2. If the radiator fan starts working at 64 degrees centigrade at low speed and 68 degrees centigrade at high speed, adjustment of the ETS1 and the ETS2 is proper. If not, adjust the switches accordingly. Open the cover of the ETS and check the microswitch. If any terminal connection is loose, tighten the connection properly. All the ETS should be fitted properly on their foundations. In the A schedule of circuit breakers, visually check the foundation screws of all the circuit breakers. Check the operation of the circuit breakers manually. They should work properly on their positions. Check the terminal connections of the circuit breakers. All connections must be fully tightened.